Alright, in section 3.3 we have a long division. So let's look at a basic idea of division, a fraction. How many times does 7 go into 38? It goes in 5 times, with 3 left over, so 5 and 3/7. So remember, 5 times 7 is 35, plus 3 is 38, so 38/7 equals 5 and 3/7. Your divisor is your 7. Your dividend, it's what you're dividing into, 38. Your quotient is your answer, and your remainder is your numerator. Okay, so you've got dividend, dividend divided by divisor equals quotient or answer plus remainder over divisor. Or another way you can do it is if you multiply everything by d, you get dividend equals divisor times quotient plus r. Alright, so let's do long division here. Okay, let's divide x into 6x squared. Well, x times what is 6x squared? It's 6x. So 6x times each of these, right? This is going to give you 6x squared. That's going to give you 24x minus 24x. And I change my signs, so 6x squared becomes negative, and minus 24x becomes positive, and now I can just add them. And I get minus 2x, and I get my plus 12. Now x times what gives me minus 2x? Well, minus 2. So minus 2x and positive 8. And I change my signs, and I add, and I get 4. Now 4 is my remainder. Okay. X minus 4 is my divisor, and Q is my answer. So you can either write it this way, this guy divided by this guy equals that, or your dividend equals your divisor times your quotient plus remainder. Look at it either way. Here's another example of long division. We're dividing this guy into that. Okay? So they want you to find Q and R, and then write it this way. So 2x squared goes in how many times into 8x to the 4th? Well, that's 4x squared. Because 4x squared times 2x squared is 8x to the 4th. And this is minus 4x to the 3rd, and that's plus 8x to the 2nd. And then I changed all my signs, and when I add, I get 4x cubed minus 2x squared minus 3. Notice, by the way, you have to have every place represented. Since there are no x cubes, I had to write a 0x cubed in there. Okay, so now I ask how many 2x squareds go into 4x cubed? Well, that's 2x. 2x times 2x squared is 4x cubed. 2x times minus x is minus 2x squared. And 2x times 2 is minus 4x, or plus 4x. And I change my signs, and when I add, these go away, and I just get minus 7x, and I bring down the 1. That's my remainder, because I can't find any more x squareds within just an x. Okay, so that's my remainder, and this is my quotient, my divisor, my dividend. So they're all right there. Thus, my dividend equals my divisor times my quotient plus the remainder. Okay, let's do another long division, and we'll show you synthetic division using the same problem. So x goes into 2x squared, 2x cubed, 2x squared times. So 2x squared times x is 2x cubed. 2x squared times minus 3 is minus 6x squared. Change your signs, and when you add, you get minus x squared. I bring down the plus 0x and the plus 5. Remember, you got to have every place represented. X goes into x squared, x times minus x times. So minus x times x is minus x squared. Minus x times minus 3 is positive 3x, and I change my signs, and when I add, I get minus 3x plus 5. X goes into 3x, minus 3 times. So minus 3 times x is minus 3x. Minus 3 times minus 3 is positive 9, and I change my signs, and when I add, they go away. That gives me a remainder of minus 4. Okay? Now, synthetic division works the same way in that as long as you keep your numbers in the right columns, you don't need the variables. because this column represents your x cubes, your x squareds, your x's, and your constants. Now, one of the things you have to know about synthetic division is you can't have a number in front of x. If you have like 5x minus 3 as your divisor, you can't do synthetic division. It has to be just x and plus or minus a number. Okay, since this one is x minus 3, we just divide by 3. You change the sign. Change the sign on that guy. Okay, and we write down the 2, the minus 7, the 0, and the 5. And then you draw this line underneath it. And then you draw this line here. Okay, now you always bring this number down to 2. And then you multiply 3 times 2 to give you the next number, 6. And you add and you get minus 1. Multiply to give you the next number. And you add and you get minus 3. Multiply to get you the next number. And you add and you get minus 4. And so remember, this first guy is always your remainder, and these next guys are the constant, the x, and the x squared term. So in other words, you're divided by x minus 3, and you got an answer of 2x squared minus 1x minus 3, with a remainder of minus 4. Okay, so this is the same problem. They're just writing out the way that the answer wanted it written out. They wanted to write P equals D times Q plus R. So here's your P, here's your D, here's your Q, and there's your R. So let's do this one. Synthetic division. We're dividing by x plus 2. So remember, change the sign to minus 2. Bring down the 3. Well, first off, you got your 3, 5, negative 4. You got 0, 7, and 3. You got to represent x squared there. So you got to put a 0 in its place. So bring down the 3. Multiply. Bring down the minus 1. Or add. You get minus 1. Multiply. Add and you get minus 2. Multiply. Add and you get 4. Multiply. Add and you get minus 1. Multiply. And you get 2. Add and you get 5. So there's your remainder. Your constant, x, x squared, x cubed, x to the 4th. So that's what this q is. Remainder is 5. Now by the remainder theorem, if you plug minus 2 into the function, you should get the remainder. So the number that you divided by, minus 2, plugs into the formula, you get r every time. And I checked it just to show you that it does work. Example 5. Okay. They say show that p of 1 equals 0. Well, you plug p of 1 in there and you get 0. So x minus 1 is a factor. Since 1 gives you 0, 1 is a 0, 1 is an x-intercept, and x minus 1 is a factor. All three things can be said in the same way. If 1 is a 0, 1 is an x-intercept, and 1x minus 1 is a factor. So let's write this thing out. 1 x cubed, 0 x squared, minus 7x, and plus 6. You write it out. You write down your 1 there. So you bring down the 1 to start. Multiply, add, multiply, add, multiply, add, and you get 0. So that lets you know that it is a factor. And so now you know that 1x squared plus 1x minus 6 is your answer, and 0 is your remainder. So that tells you x minus 1 is a factor. And these last two guys you can factor, and so there you go. You can figure that guy out. Now here they say, find a polynomial of degree 3 with these 4 zeros. Now they say the coefficient of x cubed is minus 6. We'll get to that in a minute. So you get x minus the minus 3, x minus 0, x minus a 1, x minus a 5. It's always x minus each of these numbers. Well, x minus a minus 3 is x plus 3. X minus 0 is just x. And those two don't change. Okay, now if you multiply this guy times this guy, you get that. If you multiply these two, you get that. And now if you multiply them all together and you combine like terms, you get this guy. Now remember they said the x cubed term has to be minus 6. Well, the x cubed term is minus 3. So to make it minus 6, you have to multiply everything by 2. So multiply everything by 2 and it changes your polynomial to exactly what they wanted. Alright. So on this question, they ask you, when you divide a polynomial by a factor x minus c, we obtain the polynomial x minus c times q plus the remainder. Then we say x minus c is the divisor, and q is the quotient, and r is the remainder. If we divide the polynomial by the factor x minus c and we obtain a remainder of 0, we know that c is a factor of p, and it's also a 0 of p. If we divide by x minus c, we obtain a remainder of k. We know that p of c equals k. Remember, if you get a remainder of k by dividing by c, then you know p of c always equals your remainder, in this case, k. And number 7, they give you p and d. They ask you to do the division. Okay, now we have to use long division because this needs to be just x plus or minus a number. It's x squared. So we've got to do the long division. Show every term. You need a 0x and a 0. You need a 0x here. And so x squared times what gives me 2x to the 4th? Well, 2x squared. 2x squared times each of these gives me this. I change my signs and I add, and I get this guy, and I bring down some more stuff. Then I ask how many x squareds go into minus x cubed. Well, it's minus x. So minus x times each one of these gives you this. Change your signs and add, and you get this. Bring it down to 0. Now x squared into x squared is 1. So 1 times each of these gives me this. And I change my signs, and I add, and there's my remainder. So I've got my my dividend, divisor, quotient, remainder over divisor. Okay, now number 8, same thing. They want you to do long division here. Okay, so you divide x squared into 2x to the 5th, you get 2x to the 3rd. Multiply each one of those by 2x to the 3rd, and you get this guy. Notice you got to have every term represented. When you change your signs and add, you get this, and you bring down the minus 2x squared. How many x squareds are in 6x to the 4th? Well, 6x squared. Multiply 6x squared times each of these 3, and you get this. Change your signs, and when you add, you get this. Bring down the plus 3. X squared into 17x cubed is 17x. Okay, so you multiply 17x times each one, gives you this row. Change your signs, and when you add, you get this guy, bringing down the minus 5. Now x squared into 43x squared is 43. So 43 times each one of these gives you this guy. And when you change your signs and add, you get this. Okay, so there's your dividend, divisor, quotient, remainder over divisor. Okay, so we're dividing p by d. Okay, now they want you to find p equals d times q plus r. It's the same thing we just did. 2x minus 3. You can't do synthetic division yet because it's got to be x plus or minus a number, not 2x minus a number. So you got to do long division, and you finally get a remainder of 3. Your quotient is x squared minus 1. Your divisor is 2x minus 3, and your dividend is that guy there. Now 25, you're dividing by x minus 3, so now you can do synthetic division with just 3. And you get 2 minus 5 and 3. Okay?